Exposed. The haunted secret lurking 3 miles deep that the military desperately tried to hide. Clara's heart raced as she stumbled into the dim light of her living room, the door creaking shut behind her like some ominous warning. Just hours before, she had been serving greasy burgers and lukewarm coffee at the diner, where patrons whispered about the military base lurking just beyond the town line, talk of disappearances and strange noises. Her legs ached. Every bone in her body begged for rest, yet fatigue couldn't dampen the prickle of unease crawling up her spine. The metallic clanging came once more, louder, echoing through the darkness, vibrating deep in her bones, too close for comfort. The air was thick, almost electric, as Clara glanced at the shadowy corners of her home, feeling a nagging dread settle in her stomach. Those tales lingered in the back of her mind, stories of soldiers vanishing, flickering lights dancing in the sky. Her kids, Mia and Tanner, blissfully unaware, giggled in their room about an invisible friend whom they claimed told them secrets. It chilled Clara, a simple smile struggling against her rising fear. She took a deep breath, forcing herself to focus on the mundane as she poured a cup of coffee. Maybe a little caffeine would shake off the chill. Before she could even sip, the overhead lights flickered violently, the shadow of a passing car casting eerie shapes across the wall. She froze, the cup nearly slipping from her fingers. A goosebump-inducing silence enveloped her, thick and heavy, poised to swallow her whole. Glancing towards the kids' room, she felt something slither through the air, a presence straining against her skin, setting her nerves on edge. Everything spiraled, shadows creeping along the walls, stretching like dark fingers reaching for her. Days slipped by like nightmares from which she couldn't wake. One by one, neighbors' homes went dark and abandoned. A procession of for sale signs bloomed like dead flowers. What was happening? Clara felt it, the vengeful weight of fear settling in her heart like a dead weight. She needed to protect Mia and Tanner from whatever haunted the quiet corners of their world. So, she delved deep into the town's history like an archaeologist unearthing buried secrets. Then the whispers turned sharper, jangling her nerves. On the brink of sleep one night, Clara imagined shadows writhing at the edge of her backyard, a figure waiting, watching. Each dinner became a battle for normalcy, the tension rising when her kids fell silent, their eyes wide as they studied the walls. Was she losing them? The moment they vanished from their beds, her hope cracked like fragile glass. Racing out into the cold, dread curled around her heart. Authorities were useless. Their answers only fueled her growing despair. She had to act, confront the very evil slumbering beneath the military base, where rusted chains hinted at something far worse than she could possibly understand. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Clara gripped the rusty key she had found in her mother's shoebox, its cold metal promising entrance into mysteries long buried. The ground thumped beneath her feet, alive, throbbing, as if it were aware of her presence. "Mommy, help us!" echoed from the distance a child's voice, innocent yet filled with terror, cutting through the suffocating darkness. Who was she really up against? Clara inhaled deeply, stepping closer to the barbed wire fence, feeling the pulse of something ancient hum through the soil. The night held its breath, waiting for her next move, and all around her, the shadows lurked, hungry for more than just their secrets. A chill shot through Clara as she pushed against the rusted gate, the metal shrieking like a banshee in the night. This place felt alive, whispers wrapping around her like tendrils of smoke. With each step, she could almost taste the darkness, sharp and bitter. The ground felt unsteady beneath her, the earth trembling as if warning her to turn back. "Mommy," the voice wafted through the air, intoxicating yet chilling, tugging at her heartstrings with raw desperation. Clenching the key tightly, she scanned the dim path that led deeper into the woods. Could it really be one of her children? The thought propelled her forward, the urgency melding with her fear. "Stay close. I'm coming," she shouted, Her voice faltering under the weight of the shadows, as Clara waded through the forest's embrace. The trees loomed taller, their branches twisting like skeletal fingers reaching out, threatening to ensnare her. And still, that voice lingered, plaintive and desperate. Was it leading her to her children? Or drawing her into a trap? Her breaths came quick and shallow, every rustle in the underbrush making her heart race. A sudden gust of wind whistled through the branches, carrying with it a discernible whisper that sent ice shooting down her spine. Come join us. It was not just one voice, but many, blending into a haunting cacophony that echoed in her mind. She felt the primal urge to flee, to abandon her quest for the sake of self-preservation, but the love for her children anchored her. Then she saw a flash of light flickering through the trees, beckoning like a moth to a flame. Clara's instincts screamed to turn away, to run, yet every instinct in her being pulled her toward it. The flickering grew brighter as she approached, revealing a clearing alive with unnatural light. What she saw sent her heart thundering in her chest. A circle of strange, glowing symbols sprawled across the ground, shimmering like broken glass in the night. Shadows danced within the light, twisting forms that were almost recognizable. Was it her imagination? Or were they the shapes of her children? Mia? Tanner? Her voice cracked, a frantic plea that pierced the stillness. The shadows swirled, coiling tighter around the symbols as if responding to her call. An ominous hum resonated through the air, a vibration that rattled her bones. The ground trembled more violently now, and she stumbled, fighting to steady herself. Her gaze shot back to the woods where she had come from, and she realized with horror that the shadows had shifted. They were no longer just veils of darkness, but lurking figures, watching and waiting. She was no longer alone. Help us, Mommy, the voices echoed in unison, now more urgent, more terrified. They felt like shackles on her soul, a desperate pull that amplified the terror clawing at her heart. But the moment she stepped into the circle, the hum intensified, metamorphosing into a desperate wail. Clara's blood ran cold as she understood. This was no sanctuary. This was a gateway. Get out of here, she screamed, heedless of the rising storm of shadows. Yet before she could retreat, a hand shot from the glow, a small, familiar hand. Mommy. Without thinking, she lunged toward it, heart pounding in her ears, but the shadows surged, splintering around her as the darkness erupted in a cacophony of screams. Clara felt herself being swept away, the world blurring around her as the shadows reached and clawed, pulling her into their embrace. As she fought, the whispers grew louder, drowning her in despair. Then she realized she could no longer hear her children's cries. Only her own voice echoed in the night, swallowed by the void. What awaited her in the depths of that glowing circle? And were Mia and Tanner truly gone? Clara's last thoughts spiraled into the abyss. Had she saved them, or had she damned them all? As she fell into darkness, a chilling certainty crept in. This was only the beginning. In the suffocating dark, Clara's senses flickered. One moment she felt the cool earth beneath her, and the next, it was gone. She tumbled forward, the shadows engulfing her as if the very darkness had come alive. The howls of tormented voices rose around her, their cries a terrifying symphony that clawed at her sanity. Mommy! The voice sliced through the chaos, and for a split second, hope kindled in her heart. She scrambled blindly, reaching out, yet the darkness snatched at her hands, pulling them away. Where are you? She gasped, panic rushing like a torrent through her veins. Her lungs screamed for air, but the thick, noxious silence pressed in. Suddenly, she hit the ground hard. The impact sent a jolt through her body, and a tangible wave of unease crawled up her spine. Clara lay there, feeling the damp earth seeping into her clothes. She forced herself to breathe, to listen. Somewhere in this cavern of despair, the voices whispered secrets, beckoning her, taunting her. Help us, Mommy, were they real? Or just figments of her shattered mind? She could almost taste the familiar sweetness of her children, yet it tasted like ash in her mouth. Desperation clawed at her. I'm coming, she cried, though certainty evaporated with each echoing whisper. The faint glow of the symbols flickered on the edges of her vision, a grotesque dance that seemed to pulse with a sinister heartbeat. With a surge of determination, Clara forced herself to her feet, each step a struggle against the weight of shadows that clung to her like mist. She could not give in. Not now. As she moved, shapes began to coalesce around her, looming figures that dripped and poured like thick honey. She recoiled, a chill spreading through her gut. These weren't just shadows. They were memories, twisted and tormented, clawing their way to the surface. Mia, Tanner. The names tumbled from her lips, barely audible over the cacophony. The memories shifted, faces briefly emerging and dissolving, leaving her cold and hollow. Clara's heart raced. Was this fate? A punishment? She had to find a way out. The ground shuddered beneath her. Instinctively, she stumbled towards the pulsating light. Each step felt like marching into an abyss filled with broken promises and unfulfilled love. Mommy, the voices reached a fever pitch, and with each syllable, the shadows surged, their tendrils wrapping around her ankles, dragging her down. Clara resisted, fighting against despair. Her eyes darted around, searching for a sign, a glimmer of hope in a realm of nightmares. Then, a flutter. A flash of light broke through the darkness like a beacon. Clara squinted, forcing her feet to move, to run towards it. But the shadows moaned in protest, pulling her backward, their grasp tightening like a vice around her. She let out a cry, barely holding onto the frayed edges of her resolve. As she stumbled towards the light. Suddenly it shifted in hue, turning from a comforting white to a sickly green. The fire contained flickering with dark intent. The sound morphed into a thrumming pulse, a chaotic chant that vibrated throughout her body, making her bones rattle. Join us. Clara's breath caught, a grip of dread tightening around her throat. What did it mean? No, she choked out, backing away even as the shadows pressed closer, eager to claim her. Then a figure materialized, small and desperate, a child's face with wide, pleading eyes. Help me, Mommy. Please. The agony in the voice resonated deep within. Clara lunged forward, instinct overriding fear. She reached out, but as she did, the world spun faster, the shadows merging into a storm, darkness swirling chaotically, threatening to swallow her whole. Find me. The voice screamed, echoing as the edges of glow erupted, blinding her. She stumbled backward, the ground pulling her under again as the light pulsed with raw energy, a vortex threatening to tear apart everything she held dear. Then, silence. Everything stopped. Clara's heart raced in the void. What had happened? Were they close? Or had she lost them forever in that accursed light? A foul whisper lingered, curling around her consciousness like smoke. It's not over. Clara. The shadows coiled tighter, and with a final burst of dread, the darkness consumed her. What hideous truth lay beyond this void? And could she ever escape the grasping fingers of that malevolent realm? The silence didn't last long. The oppressive weight of the darkness shifted, and Clara felt it squeeze tighter around her. The familiar voices returned, echoing around her like a distorted choir, each plea pulling at the strings of her heart. It was all a cruel game, their calls twisted, seeking to draw her further into despair. Mommy, come back. The child's voice shattered the silence anew, and she swung her head wildly, searching for the source amid the shadows that writhed like living things. Clara's feet were rooted, as though the earth was hungry for her surrender. Please help. The whispers of torment pressed against her ears. There was movement all around her now, shadows thrumming with malevolent energy, forming grotesque shapes that flickered in and out of view. One moment, she saw a child's face. The next, it twisted into something monstrous, a reflection of her deepest anxieties. Are you ready to join us? The shadows laughed, the sound echoing hollowly in the pit of her stomach. Clara clenched her fists, willing herself to fight, to remember who she was. Suddenly, the ground beneath her swelled, rising and falling like the surface of a turbulent sea. She gasped as a crack appeared, jagged and dark, a mouth threatening to swallow her whole. No, she screamed. She turned to run, legs feeling weighted down, but the shadows leaped and danced around her, urging her toward the chasm. The hands of despair were clawing at her again, pulling her towards the brink. Then an unexpected surge. Clara surged forward, her heart racing, limbs fueled by a panic that came from deep within. I want to let you take me, she screamed, her voice a thin thread against the chaos bearing down on her. With each desperate step, she felt flickers of strength returning, memories of laughter and warmth pushing through the dark haze. Mia, Tanner, hold on, I'm coming. But just as she thought hope might pierce through, a loud roar erupted, shaking the very ground. The shadows coiled tighter, morphing into forms of familiar faces, images of her children twisted by fear, eyes wide with sorrow. "Mommy, you left us," they wailed in unison, their voices merging into one unbearable lament. The shadows snapped back, responding in anger to her words. Clara felt the toll of their cruelty intensifying around her. They were angry that she defied them, wanting to keep her terrorized and lost in this cursed chamber. "Let me go," she cried, flinging her arms wildly, trying to break free from their grasp. But the shadows just tightened their hold, their laughter more menacing now, drowning out her pleas. The glow of the symbols flashed like lightning, a brief respite in the chaos. Clara took her chance, launching herself towards the light, desperate to break free. As she reached it, a searing pain shot through her body, knocking the breath out of her. She stumbled, but her instinct to survive propelled her farther. The terrible shriek erupted, the shadows howling in fury, and Clara burst through the light, the world flipping upside down before righting itself. She landed on a hard surface, gasping, her heart racing. She was out, but not for long. As she blinked, her surroundings came into focus. She was in a sterile room, tubes snaking around her, and bright lights glaring above. And then, the laughter returned, but deeper, more resonant. It echoed through the walls like a taunting whisper. "Welcome back, Clara." The air turned icy. She felt an impending dread wash over her like a tidal wave. Something was terribly wrong. The faces of her children faded into the shadows, replaced by masked figures observing her, a cold, unyielding light illuminating their expressions of either horror or anticipation. "Did you think it was over?" someone said, their voice laced with contempt. Clara shivered, realizing she had escaped from one nightmare, only to enter another. The walls around her seemed to throb with a life of their own, and the whispering resumed, building in intensity. What had she walked into? And what had she unwittingly unleashed? Her breath quickened, and she felt the sensation of hands gripping her, invisible and unseen. "Help me." Suddenly, the chorus of voices turned real again, mixing with the cries of her children. But now it was too late. The shadows were back, angrier than before. "Beware, Clara," whispered a voice that dripped with malice. "This time, you're not the one in control." What new horrors awaited her in this twisted game? Clara realized she had to escape, that something much more sinister loomed in the edges of this unsettling reality. And time was running out. Clara's heart raced as the laughter echoed around her. It was a deep, rumbling sound, laced with malice and playing with her sanity. The sterile room felt smaller, the shadows from the masked figures inching closer, wrapping around her like a vice. "Do you remember the last time you were here?" The voice came again, this time like a sadistic whisper, curling around her ear. Clara felt the urge to scream, to lash out, but an invisible weight pressed her shoulders down hard against the bed, with tubes binding her like a modern-day mummy. Her breaths came faster, panic clawing at her throat. "What do you want?" She couldn't hide the tremor in her voice. The figures moved closer, their masks gleaming, their eyes glinting with unsettling excitement. One stepped forward, tilting its head, a grotesque imitation of curiosity. "We want to see how far you'll go to escape." Again, Clara's stomach dropped. Memories surged, images of her children running through the park, their laughter bright and carefree. But those memories twisted, mixing with confusion and darkness as the shadows behind the figures pulsed with life. "What did you do to them?" she cried, straining against her bonds. The tubes connected to her felt electric, sending sudden jolts through her body. "Where are they?" "Ah, but you mustn't worry about them." Another figure replied, its voice like ice, each word sharpened with pain. "Just focus on surviving this." Surviving. The word echoed like a reminder deep in her mind. She had fought once, and she could fight again. Clara squeezed her eyes shut against the haze of fear, trying to center her thoughts. The whispers filled the space, blending with her own racing heart. "We'll let you go if you pass the test." The figure leaned in, its breath foul and heavy. "Are you willing to face your darkest memory? It's waiting, just outside." Before Clara could respond, the room seemed to shift, walls melting away into a swirling darkness filled with the shapes of children laughing, but then morphing into screaming faces, those of her children, transformed by terror. Clara bit her lips until she tasted blood, forcing herself to hold on, not to break. "Don't let them fool you," a voice shouted from somewhere within the chaos, sharp and familiar. Clara's heart skipped. The voice belonged to Tanner. "Mom, you have to stop them. They were real. Her children, but how?" Suddenly, the sterile room exploded into 1,000 fragments, like shards of glass falling from the sky. Clara shielded her face as the pieces of her former reality scattered, leaving nothing but a gaping void swirling with shadows. "Make your choice," the echoing voice called again, reverberating against the walls of her mind. Shadows erupted around her, forming shapes that twisted and reached, pulling her thoughts deeper into a labyrinth of despairing memories. In the depths of that darkness, Clara caught a glimpse. There it was, a flicker of light at the end of a tunnel. Hope, or a trap meant to ensnare her for good. With resolve building in her chest, she pushed herself forward into the chaos, reaching for that glimmer. But just as she neared it, the shadows clawing at her shrieked in protest. Flee and forget, or stay and suffer. The decision flickered before her like a distant flame, the laughter of the masked figures echoing in her ears. Could she trust that flicker? Or would it lead her into further torment? Time pressed down heavy, and Clara knew she had to act fast. With fear bubbling fiercely in her soul, she made her choice, thrusting herself toward the light. What awaited her on the other side? The walls of fate clashed around her, and she couldn't tell if it was salvation or a deeper damnation. As she surged into the light, everything vanished in a brilliant flash. The echoes of laughter faded, and a new darkness awaited, one colder and more isolating than she had ever known. What truth wouldn't allow her escape? What had brewed in the darkness that was now threatening to consume her once more? Clara steeled herself, knowing the game was still very much afoot. "Clara," the voice resonated, chilling her to the core. "You've only just begun to see the truth, what lurked in this new abyss. And would she be brave enough to face it?" Clara gasped as she stumbled forward, the ground beneath her shifting like quicksand. The light faded, leaving her in an infinite expanse of shadow, a void that gnawed at her sanity. Silence surrounded her, thick and suffocating, like the air had been sucked out of the very universe. She could almost hear her heart beating, an unsettling metronome counting down to the unknown. "Where am I?" she whispered to herself, the sound lost in the emptiness. There were no walls, no ceiling, only an oppressive blackness wrapped tight around her. The benign glimmer of hope was swallowed whole, the realization dawning that this was not merely another room. It was worse. It was uncharted territory. "Clara," the voice beckoned again, closer now, reverberating through the chilling darkness. She turned instinctively, spine tingling. "Who are you?" Her voice trembled, betraying the fear curling in her stomach. "Your past," it replied, the echo morphing into a cacophony of whispers. The sound layered over itself, creating a symphony of regret and despair. "Your memories, unfiltered and unmasked, are waiting for you." A flash of images burst into her mind. Uninvited and ruthless, the day she missed Tanner's first school play, the disappointment etched on his tiny face. The day she lost sight of her daughter at the mall, her screams piercing through the laughter. Those moments flooded back, heavier than iron chains, coiling around her heart, squeezing until she gasped for air. No, I can't." Panic threatened to engulf her as phantoms loomed at the edges of her vision, darkening the threshold between grief and reality. "I need to leave." But the shadows within the shadows twisted, beckoning her to confront the unforgivable. "You cannot escape what's inside you," whispered a voice familiar yet foreign, like tuning into a radio station just out of reach. "Embrace them or be consumed." Clara squeezed her eyes shut, willing it all to vanish. But each remnant of joy was torn to shreds, replaced with the haunting laughter of Tamara and Tanner distorted into wails. An icy wind whipped around her, carrying memories wrapped in chains due to betrayal, guilt, and darkness she had tried to bury. The weight of it pressed harder, suffocating, a grave burden she thought she had discarded. "Face it," the voice urged again, sharper this time, wrenching her heart. "You must make the choice. You can let them go, or bring them here with you." What does that even mean? Clara screamed, the sound shuddering in the void. Suddenly, the darkness began to shift, reforming. Shapes emerged, horrific facsimiles of those she loved, faces contorted in anguish. They reached for her, ghostly hands stretching across the void, pulling her closer to what she feared most, to be held accountable for their pain. Mom. Tanner's voice, so like her son's, rang through the chaos. You left us alone. Pain and helplessness flooded her with sorrow. How could she have forgotten their pain while battling her own? No, I'd do anything to change it. To save you, she cried, the dread spilling forth. The shadows swirled faster, and for a moment, Clara felt the ground solid beneath her. She had an opportunity to change her past, to rewrite the ending. But at what cost? The cloaked figures began to assemble again, their laughter returning like a tide, dizzying and relentless. Your choice is coming, dear Clara. Will you set them free or carry their weight forever? With dread coiling in her gut, she understood the real question. Would she choose to embrace their memories, to forgive herself, or remain trapped in this purgatory of anguish? Clara stood at the precipice of her fate, the shadows beckoning, and the promise of truth woven deep within. What would she decide? Would she face the darkness head-on, or let it consume her like it had before? The choice loomed, heavy and terrifying, swirling with the uncertainty of truth she had yet to unveil. As the laughter surged once more, a chilling wind swept through, leaving Clara standing teetering at a crossroads. Time was running out. What would she sacrifice to set things right? Clara's heart raced, the ghostly voices now a roar in her ears. It was like the shadows themselves twisted into jagged mouths, gnashing their teeth as they shrieked her name. Clara, Clara. Each echo pierced the suffocating silence, dragging her deeper into despair. She stood paralyzed, the weight of her choices pressing down, darker than the void surrounding her. Memories rushed over her, a relentless tide. She reached for the wisps of her children, desperate to hold on, to explain, to make them understand the burden of her absence. Mom. Tanner's spectral voice cut deeper, his silhouette flickering like an old film reel. We waited. You left us. Clara squeezed her eyes shut again, desperate for silence. But the phantoms persisted. Memories she thought she'd packed away aggressively clawed at her mind. The day they were taken from her, her trembling fingers grazed over the air, clawing at nothing. No, I didn't mean to. I didn't know. But the shadows only cringed in response, their laughter rising in a chaotic crescendo. It was a sinister symphony, melodic yet horrific. The truth must surface, they chanted, echoing the very doubts she'd buried deep. You think you can run? The ground warped underneath her, as if reacting to her panic. She felt it pulse, a living thing bred from her soul's fatigue. Each heartbeat thundered in her chest, sinking with restless arms reaching for her. Clara stumbled back, fear prickling her skin, chills seeped into her bones. Stop. Just stop. Faces emerged from the darkness, distorted, twisted visages of her past, that of her late husband, a look of despair carved into his features. You left me. You threw it all away. No, please. Her voice broke, tears spilling over as she gasped for air. Everyone you left, what did we ever mean to you? The shadowy figure mocked, a velvet sorrow hiding the knife's edge. You could have saved us. Another figure took form, more translucent but unmistakable. Tamara, the light of her life, her laughter now a shriek. Mom, where were you? Clara's legs buckled beneath the weight of their loss. I was trying to protect you, she cried out, but the words dissipated into the suffocating air like smoke. You hid from us. The specters chorused, their hands reaching further, clawing at her. You denied us our truths. You thought you could run away. The ground shook violently. Clara stumbled, wincing as sharp fragments of memory shot through her, each more painful than the last. She remembered hiding from the guilt, pretending it didn't exist. But that pretense suffocated, chained her to this mire of despair. Enough, she screamed, a spark igniting in her. I want to be consumed by your guilt. With a daredevil lurch, she moved toward the shadows. If she was meant to face her past, she refused to let it claim her. Let it go, a whisper slipped from the void, promising both freedom and peril. Sacrifice or salvation. The crossroads loomed larger now. Clara felt a warmth stoking the cold fear in her heart, daring her to risk it all. I have to set you free, she shouted, voice quivering but resolute. In that moment, everything shifted. Darkness balled around her, swirling violently, as if both willing to flee and grasp her at once. Time seemed to stretch and warp, pulling at her soul. What would she unleash in her quest for redemption? The shadows recoiled, the laughter fading into silence for the first time, leaving an echo of anticipation as the darkness settled. She caught her breath, waiting for clarity. But the chill of uncertainty lingered. Clara stood poised for a final confrontation. What awaited her in that murk would never be the same again. Clara's breath came in ragged gasps, the remnants of the chilling chorus lingering in her mind like a sick melody. She forced herself to take a step forward into the thick gloom enveloping her, heart pounding like a war drum. Each pulse sent shocks of adrenaline racing through her body, urging her deeper into the darkness. "What do you want from me?" she shouted, her voice only barely breaking the weight of the silence that responded, heavy and expectant. The ground beneath her felt alive, shifting ominously, pulsating as if it might swallow her whole at any moment. A sharp crack echoed in the void. She flinched, instinctively retreating, her back pressing against something cold and damp. The icy touch sent a jolt of fear along her spine. It wasn't solid, more like a thick mist that wrapped around her. She turned, eyes wide, but saw only shadows that shifted and flickered, whipping about like smoke from a lost fire. "Help us," a voice soft, like a whisper of wind through autumn leaves, slipped through the layers of darkness. It crawled under her skin, sending shivers racing. "You're the only one who can set us free." "Who?" she demanded, feeling like she was shouting into an abyss. "Who are you?" With each word, something ancient stirred in the dark, a growl reverberated, deep and resonant. It seemed to encapsulate the very air around her, wrapping her in tendrils of dread. The memories surged again, days spent in joy with her family, now tainted by the specter's panicked shrieks. "I loved you. I tried." Clara felt the warmth of tears spilling from her eyes, pooling at her chin. "But the world outside, there is no outside." Another voice screeched, sharp and bitter. The ground trembled beneath her, shaking with the rage of 1,000 unshed tears. "Only this, only us. What do you want?" "I can't bring you back," Clara pleaded. The shadows closed in, the air thickening until she could hardly breathe. "Give us a part of you," they hissed, a whisper that echoed in her mind, chilling her entire being. "Sacrifice the part that betrayed us." The shadows twisted violently, coiling around her in serpentine forms, tightening. Clara's breath hitched, the stark realization hitting her like a blow. "No, I can't." Everything she had worked to protect would be lost. A piece of her heart would be severed, forever lost in this place of torment. The darkness gurgled, resembling a cruel smile. "Then you will be trapped here with us." Each phantom face shifted closer, their eyes hollow and longing. Clara felt the heat of panic wash over her, threatening to consume her. This was her final torment, a binding fate she couldn't escape. "No, I will not be like you." She lunged back, hardening her heart against the memories, against the pleading faces. She thought of her children, of Tanner's laugh, Tamara's zest for life. "I will not betray them." The shadows recoiled, their shrieks melding into a symphony of rage and disappointment, swirling like a maelstrom around her. Then, with a sudden flare of desperation, she reached outward to the essence that coiled around her, channeling all her love for Tanner and Tamara. The warmth flared up, challenging the cold. "You can't keep me," she growled, determination igniting a fire deep within her. And suddenly, a blinding light erupted from her heart, piercing the darkness. The laughter turned into screams as the shadows writhed and recoiled against that brilliance. "Clara!" The sound morphed into a multitude of voices, their tones shifting from taunting to pleading. "No, don't do this." But Clara felt the strength swell, the warmth envelop her entirely. The shadows dissolved into tendrils of smoke. Shrieks transformed into whispers as they clamored for her attention. "Will you let us go? Will you choose?" With every ounce of resolve, she pressed through the chaos. Was this the choice she truly needed to make? As the light glowed brighter, illuminating the cavern of shadows, she had only moments left before everything changed again. What would happen if she decided to break apart that haunting bond? Would this fissure unleash something more sinister from the dark depths, waiting to be reborn? The shadows recoiled further, but their anguish only fueled Clara's resolve. She could feel the warmth of her light pulsing rhythmically, a heartbeat against the consuming cold. It radiated outward, illuminating details that had eluded her in the depths, twisted roots of the earth, grotesque faces carved into the stone, and eyes that stared, soulless and hungry. What will you sacrifice? The voices pressed, twisting around her like barbed wire. Clara shut her eyes, blocking out the malicious glare of the haunted realm. I won't give you anything, she screamed defiantly. Each syllable was a stone thrown at the tempest looming over her. The shadows throbbed around her, whispering her name as if trying to weave their despair into a mantra. Above her, the darkness shivered, shifting like water disturbed. You cannot escape what you are, what you've done, with resolve carving deeper lines into her brow. Clara focused on her light. She willed it to grow, to push back against the clawing darkness surrounding her. In the depths of her heart, she felt a flicker. It was a memory, a distant image of her children, laughter echoing in sunny days, light bursting through clouds of despair. I will choose love, she howled, her voice mingling with the echo of her own powered I-in response. The darkness erupted into a frenzy, the air vibrating with an otherworldly roar. The walls of twisted shadows surged, pushing endlessly closer. Each breath Clara took tasted like ash, the dread pooling thick in her throat. Foolish girl, a voice roared, a wretched sound full of malice. You'll only condemn yourself. But Clara pressed on, fueled by desperation. I will fight for them. For us. She couldn't let fear bubble over into submission. The light pulsed, growing blindingly bright, illuminating long-buried secrets and buried truths. Faces shifted in the shadows, revealing the agonizing agony begging to escape. Release us, they cried, each note sharp and haunting, pinching Clara's heart like a vice. Or suffer alongside us forever. The walls shook as Clara felt the ground tremble. She could feel their rage pooling around her, wrapping around her throat, squeezing until her vision blurred. No, I will not suffer here, she gasped, pushing against the choking darkness. Her pulse echoed like thunder, seeking the fissures in this hell. Desperation clawed at her mind, untangling threads of memory that wrapped around her like chains. Images of her family froze in her consciousness. Images of every time she felt the pull of darkness and pushed through it surged. I refuse to be a prisoner to your despair. Then came the moment. Just as the shadows encircled her tightly, drawing the very warmth from her soul, Clara breathed deep and unleashed a final blinding pulse. The ground shattered, erupting to reveal the depths of the caverns where sorrow roiled like a storm. Light and shadow collided, the air sizzling with energy. As darkness screeched in agony, the shadows started to peel away, revealing not an escape, but a truth. Within the darkness, nestled like a secret, was a shimmering portal, a doorway that quaked with the pulse of potential. What is that? Clara breathed, fatigue dragging at her limbs. The shadows hissed, recoiling in fear. Leave it, they howled, voices merging into a frenzy of panic. You don't know what you're doing. It's a trap. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. Could this portal be her chance? Or something far worse? Without hesitation, she took a step forward, drawn by a force she could barely understand. One breath, one step, and every part of her trembled with the gravity of her choice. Would the portal release her from this torment, or unleash something more ancient and dark than the shadows she faced? Each step felt like a dance with fate, and she teetered on the edge of a precipice filled with shadows and light. What would she find on the other side? Clara took that step, heart pounding, breath catching in her throat. The air buzzed with electric anticipation. She felt herself drawn toward the shimmering portal like a moth to a flame. But as she approached, the shadows surged forward, a frenzy of cold terrors clawing at her. Don't do it, they cried, voices merging into a cacophony of sinister warnings. It's not what you think. Ignoring their twisted pleas, Clara drew closer, the warmth of hope blossoming within her as she grasped the realities she had run from. She envisioned Mia, her laughter echoing through the sunny days they had shared. Tanner, his curious eyes sparkling with life. The terrible weight of their absence pressed down, but it ignited a fierce resolve within her, with every fiber of her being screaming for her to hesitate. Clara leaped forward, crossing the threshold into the portal. As she passed through, everything shifted in an explosion of light and sound. Suddenly, she found herself in a place that felt both foreign and familiar, a sun-drenched meadow, filled with wildflowers swaying gently in a soft breeze. The air was crisp, pure. In the distance, the laughter of children rang like music, a sound she had almost forgotten. "Mia, Tanner!" Clara cried out, spinning in circles, searching for them. Hope surged through her veins, pushing back the memories of despair that had swallowed her whole. The giggle echoed from behind a cluster of vibrant daisies. Clara rushed forward, heart racing, brimming with love and fear. And there they were, her children, illuminated by the golden sunlight, their faces bright and innocent, joyfully embracing the new world around them. "Mommy!" Mia shouted, running towards her, arms wide open. Clara caught her, an overwhelming wave of relief washing over her, tears streaming down her face. "Tanner!" She swept him up in her other arm, holding them tightly, as if they were the very air she breathed. The shadows that had once pursued her felt nothing now but an uncaring whisper in this beautiful meadow. "I thought I lost you both," she choked out, her voice thick with emotion. "Where did you go?" Tanner asked, his brows furrowing with genuine concern. "I had to find you." "I'm so sorry, I would never leave you," Clara murmured, holding them close as warmth enveloped them, slicing away the chill of grief that had lingered for far too long. But as the moment stretched, a shadow flickered at the edge of the meadow, a reminder of the darkness she had triumphed over. Clara felt the fear try to creep back into her mind, but she pushed it away. She glanced back to the spot where the portal had been. "There will always be darkness," she whispered. "I can't go back now." "Mommy!" Mia turned her head sharply, eyes wide, pointing at the horizon. "Look!" A shimmering reflection danced at the far end of the meadow, the portal once again flickering, whispering promises like a temptress luring her back toward pain. Clara's heart raced. What was it wanting from her now? "I want to let you take her." A voice, the same sinister one from before, echoed helplessly across vast distances. The shadows had come, looking to claim her for their own desires. "Clara, you have to choose." The air seemed to pulse, a gravitational pressure weighing on her spirit. "Will you face what was, or protect what is?" Clara held her children tighter, the warmth of their little bodies reminding her of the vibrant life she fought to honor. "I choose this," she whispered. "I choose love." With each heartbeat, the meadow exuded peace. The shadows that threatened to breach flickered but shied away, fading back into their cruel realm. Clara stood her ground, shielding her children from the whispers of despair that threatened to claw back into their lives. Together, they turned away from the darkness, moving deeper into the meadow of light. Each step felt lighter than air as the warmth of hope curled around them, smiling down from above. The shadows were behind, the horrors freed. All that remained was family, love, and the possibility of a future that was no longer marred by feared. In the distance, laughter echoed, a heartwarming salutation from a world hoping for healing. As Clara guided Mia and Tanner hand in hand, a final thought echoed in her mind. True strength lay not in facing the darkness alone, but in embracing the light of connection and love that can never truly fade. And so, they stepped forward together into the endless horizon of tomorrow, leaving the shadows to linger, forgotten, behind them. But don't forget, if you enjoyed this journey, you need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support by smashing the like button. Flood the comments with your thoughts and theories. What did you think of Clara's story? And don't wait even one more second to share this with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support matters.